Henry's missing Valentine roses. Henry was at his wits' end and felt like his world was collapsing. What on earth was he to do? He'd been away on business off and on for several months. It hadn't been his choice, it was just something that had become necessary. His employer had opened a new operation many miles away, and Henry had needed to stay locally to the site so that he could ensure that all of the new staff that had been hired were properly trained. He appreciated the importance of this. Customers expected good service after all. Yet his relationship with his fiancée had suffered. At first, Helen had accepted his prolonged absence as a necessary part of his job, but in the last few weeks she had started to complain, and their romance had come under severe strain. Thankfully, all of the employees were now fully up to speed, and his period of being away from home was over. However, matters between him and Helen hadn't recovered. Valentine's Day was looming, and he was certain that if he didn't make a special effort, there was a strong risk that he would lose her. As he walked along the street, he sighed heavily. He knew that she adored roses, particularly red ones. If he could find some, maybe that would improve things with his beloved. There was just one problem. There didn't seem to be any available. He had tried the flower shop around the corner from work, and remembered how his heart had seemed to stop as the lady behind the counter had explained that there had been a problem with the weather in the country that grew the majority of these blooms, so they were in short supply. All of their stock was reserved for their usual patrons who had pre-ordered them. And Henry had encountered the same issue at every other similar business. Sorry, sir, but the weather problems in the growing country have caused a severe shortage, and all of our deliveries are accounted for by our regulars. Maybe you might have some luck if you tried the internet, but it's likely that they're having the same trouble as us. Then he had an idea. His friend John had an allotment and grew these beautiful blooms there. His wife also liked them, so John produced armsful, and in the summer their house was filled with a stunning scent from a wide variety of shades. Indeed, the perfume from these wonderful plants was the first thing that assaulted your senses as you entered through the front door. Possibly he might be allowed to take a few red ones. Henry took the shortcut to his friend's patch, going down the lane between the rows of red brick houses. He turned onto the footpath at the side of the canal, where birds squawked in an effort to find food, and the surface rippled in the slight breeze, over the small bridge, and there it was. John's plot was near the front, but as Henry opened the gate to the site, he saw that it consisted of bare earth. "Sorry, mate. If you'd have come yesterday, I could have let you have some, but I gave a few to Tony and Gary this morning, and took the rest home for Sheila. Maybe you could try Phil. He grows some in his backyard." They quickly swapped news, and then with a sense of deep foreboding at his uncertain future, Henry dejectedly left and made his way back across the water to the town. He cut through the shopping centre, past the bus station, down a side lane and into the road where Phil lived. It was a pleasant place, he thought, and quite unlike the flat he and Helen lived in. This avenue consisted of 3-bedroomed, semi-detached properties with large front and rear gardens. There was a sense of peace and space. A good place to bring up the children that he and Helen had discussed having. Well, if he could find some roses to cheer her up, that was. "I'm really sorry I can't help you, buddy. Last year I definitely would have had loads I could have given you, but this time the plants have suffered from some disease, and most have died. I've already given a few that remain to Sally. I know it's a bit cheeky, but why don't you try the park? At this time of year, they might have some in their greenhouse. It's so big, there's certainly plenty of space for huge quantities." Henry went to the end of the street, turned left, walked past the railway station and cinema, and through the gates to the public gardens. He smiled. The town definitely was lucky to have such a lovely amenity available to it. He vaguely remembered that a local wealthy businessman had left it to the municipality when he died a long time ago. Such generosity. The big old house that dominated the site still stood proudly in the middle of the grounds, providing visitors with teas, coffees, and a range of other delicious refreshments from the cafe it hosted on its ground floor. He entered the greenhouse and looked around. He hadn't been in here for many years. The last time was when he was a boy and had been brought along by his parents. His father had been an avid gardener, and every Sunday had insisted that the whole family troop along to this glass extravaganza to see if there were any new plants being propagated. Henry scanned the massive interior. There were some large trees that stretched up to the top of the structure, a few bushes that lay on either side of the walkways, and even a waterfall that slooshed down into a clear pool below. The sound of the liquid as it gurgled in the pond was delightful, and reminded Henry of the lazy summer days he and Helen had enjoyed at the seaside during a vacation in the first months of their relationship. He knew that they both had particularly fond memories of the many times they had paddled inside the surf, devouring the wonderful strawberry ice creams. Could they ever return to such joint happiness? He moved along one of the paths, and as he turned a bend, the vista of a couple of large troughs of roses opened up. He caught his breath at the wide range of colours and shapes. The display was truly amazing. He went over to the sides of one of the trenches and was just about to reach in and remove a handful of the stunning blooms when he heard a whistling sound. His face went a little red in embarrassment as he pulled back just in time, and a couple of seconds later one of the gardeners who was carrying a pair of secateurs appeared, his grey hair and laughter lines around his eyes giving him a kindly appearance. "Nice, aren't they?" the employee said. "We've even got a couple of new varieties in there. We've spent a few years developing them." Henry was silent for a moment as he stared at the ground, and a tear appeared at the side of one of his eyes. Then he looked up and slowly nodded. "They're gorgeous," he whispered. "My girlfriend loves roses, but I can't find any for her. I'll be in deep trouble if I can't give her some for Valentine's Day, but all of the shops have sold out, and my friends have already given the ones they've grown in their gardens away. I don't know what to do." "Yes, that's a tricky spot you're in." He looked around, and on seeing that they were alone, he reached into the nearest trough and used his secateurs to cut a few. They were all red. "Take these. Today is my last day here before I retire, so I don't care if I get into trouble. I hope this gets you out of your dilemma." Henry shook the gentleman's hand, turned round, and as he walked away the council employee saw that there was a huge smile on Henry's face. The chap turned, and as he walked off towards the staff kitchen to have his final afternoon break, he thought, "What's the point of growing these roses and then watching them die at the end of the season? Such beautiful blooms should be used to help young love on its way." He rolled his eyes. "Anyway, I suppose I'd better put the kettle on now."